let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
We have a
This is so
we
awesome.
are an open culture that believes
actually
in
a big
importance of
piece
What is that process that a developer, or let's say a
As the
developer
Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed,
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours live stream. Wait a minute, that didn't go right, Johnny.
Something's wrong.
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Expert live stream. I am co-host Andrew Sullivan, joined as always by the amazing and incredible Mr. Jonny Rickard. Johnny, what just happened there?
Rebranding. Names are hard. We did it.
Marketing, right? No, so hopefully you missed or you saw a little bit of nuance there. And as Johnny just pointed out, so we are rebranding, if you will, but just minorly. So we're going from Ask an OpenShift Admin to Ask an OpenShift Expert. And Johnny, I know you've been working behind the scenes on this one quite a bit with the various designers and stuff like that, but the rationale and the the expectation is like, well, we talk to a lot more folks than just OpenShift admins, right?
Mhm.
And we don't want to be we want to be inclusive, if you will, of anyone who cares about anything OpenShift related. So, anyways, Johnny, thank you for all of your hard work on that. We've got some updated videos and stuff like that. If anybody was at Summit, it may have gotten slightly spoiled for you because if you came into the booth, it was the Ask an OpenShift Expert booth.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming. I think we were supposed to do this probably like earlier in the year, and then because we're crazy and we got our own lives going on. It's weird. Yeah, we just now we're getting around to it.
I don't know
So
what you're talking about, Johnny. There's not a lot going on.
yeah, man. But yeah, if you saw the booth, if you're at Summit, then yeah, it's definitely like it aligns with that. And to Sully's point, right? It's more about like. We're here for everybody. Yeah, it doesn't have to just be cluster admins and stuff like that anymore. Like, you come in, ask your questions. We'll do our best to answer them, and and if we can't, then we'll do our best to find out somebody that or find someone that can, and try to get you figured out. And I just want to say real quick, what's up to Christian? Hey, Christian, how's it going, man? I see you over here, so thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, we missed you at Summit though.
Yes, we did.
So we even had Hillary in the booth with us.
Yeah. I saw so many people. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, anyways, Renata, I see your question there. We'll address that here in just a moment. So one, this is Ask an OpenShift Expert. We are here to answer any and all questions that you happen to have about anything OpenShift related. We'll do our best to answer those questions. Johnny and I know almost nothing about anything, so oftentimes that means that we tap dance while we find answers from the experts behind the scenes, or otherwise, a lot of times we'll end up following up on things that we encounter. So reaching out to product management or engineering or whoever it is inside of Red Hat in order to get those answers and then following them up in future episodes. With that being said, today's stream is we titled it, Summit Recap for 2025, but reality is we wanted to do this one a little bit more back to our roots of kind of an Ask Me Anything, and that is we worked with some of our counterparts over in the product marketing organization and kind of polled everybody from the hybrid platforms business unit. So that's the business unit that does product management, product marketing, tech marketing, et cetera, for OpenShift. Basically said, hey, while you were talking to customers, whether it was in the booth, whether it was in customer briefing center meetings, whether it was at lunch, whether it was in the hallway, whether it was over a drink in the hopefully evening, like what were the questions that you got asked, and what were the questions that came up frequently? What were the things that you want, that maybe we can talk about here on the stream and help to address? So we've pulled out of the, was it like 60 responses that we got, Johnny?
Yes, a
we've
lot.
we've
Yeah.
pulled out like 10 of those, with the hope that we will be able to roll through those answers and at least get them started. But that being said, and certainly to Renata up here who asked a question, I say up here because I had to scroll the chat up. Please don't hesitate to ask us questions about anything at any time. We love to hear from y'all. We do our best to answer the questions, and of course we will. Again, if we don't know the answer, we will follow up. So to address your question, Renata, so one about how to get hands-on experience with OKD. My RHCA was acquired back when it was OpenShift 3.9, which was right after 3.7. There was 3.8 never shipped, if anybody remembers that. I want to catch up. Can I get some advice? So yes, absolutely. I'm going to give you a small answer now, and this is actually one of the questions, or very close to one of the questions that we have pulled aside. So short answer is you can get hands-on with OKD just by going to okd.io. So if you go there, there's links to the documentation, there's links for downloads for all of the different things. You don't need any sort of subscription or anything like that to use OKD. It is the community version of OpenShift. If you want to get hands-on with OpenShift itself, the best way to do that is with a developer subscription. So with a developer subscription, which is completely free, you can go to developers.redhat.com, you register for an account, and it gives you 365 and 1/4 days of subscription to OpenShift and RHEL and a number of other things in the Red Hat portfolio. And that is free in perpetuity. So after 365 days, you go in and you renew that, and you get it for another 365 days. And you can keep on doing that. Do note that that is limited to single user non-production use cases, however. So it's basically for learning and development, like that type of stuff, hence why it's the developer subscription. What was I going to say? So that developer subscription is for both virtual and bare metal. So a lot of times, like I live in a bare metal world because I do a lot of stuff with virtualization. So it's like up to 16 nodes across virtual or bare metal. You can go inside of there. So if you want to get hands-on with deploying OpenShift and bare metal, you can do that. If you want to deploy into one of the on-prem virtual environments and do a hyperscaler, all that's possible through there. Anything to add, Johnny?
Yeah, if you want to do local, then you could do CRC local. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names.
CRC is the old name. It was Code Ready Containers. Now it's just OpenShift Local.
OpenShift local. Thank you. I said CRC and I was like, that's wrong, but then I couldn't remember where I was wrong at. So yeah, I was in a bad spot. But yeah, so you can do OpenShift local, which is it's a VM instance that runs on your laptop that you can do pretty much most things with OpenShift. There are some limitations, but by and large, if you're really trying to just figure out OpenShift and get used to installing operators and that kind of workflow, then that's probably a really nice approach too.
Yeah.
But you still need the developer subscription. So I mean, at the end of the day, that's your gateway.
Yep. And I think you linked in here, learn.openshift.com. There's also try.openshift.com, which will take you over to the page that has links for like how to get trial licenses and all that type of stuff. Let's see. Other questions that are coming in. Real quick before we answer those, Johnny, do we have anything top of mind this week?
No, not really. I didn't come up with anything. I just kind of those questions were pretty much it. So
I will point out, I believe it is in approximately 2 weeks. I don't remember the day of the week. Let me see if I can find it on my calendar real quick. Monday, June 16th is the What's New in OpenShift 4.19 event, is what I'm going to call it. So I'll give you a small sneak peek of 4.19 today because I want to show some things and stuff like that. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that live stream. So that is the product management team spending 90 minutes presenting all of the nitty-gritty details of the things that have added, removed, changed inside of OpenShift 4.19. Yeah, and then I don't remember the precise shipping date. I'm not supposed to say precise shipping dates anyways, because they can always slip. Whenever people internally ask like, oh, when is version such and such shipping? It's, well, here's the planned date, but literally up until the moment the bits are available on the mirror, it can slip out because at any point in time, QA can find an issue that'll delay it. So anyways.
I can't believe I forgot about that. I scheduled that thing. Like I'm going to be... I'm just in a weird spot right now, dude. Like it's not good.
But you said you had a graduation to attend last night, so congratulations
Yes,
and all that.
thank you
So
for doing that. That's pretty awesome. Yes, my son graduated from high school last night, so I'm very proud of him. And it was a long day. So we left here like 4, didn't get home until like 10:30. Like, he goes to a giant school, so it's yeah, it was
yeah,
awesome though, and yeah, super proud of him. And yeah, just a little out of
yeah.
it.
No, that's awesome. My oldest has one more year, so I'll be there with you in a year's time. You
Yes.
know,
I tried to scream as loud as I possibly could. I mean, you would have thought that I was at a heavy metal concert last night because I was going nuts. So I'm just so happy for him. So
oh, that's awesome. Glad to hear that. It's a huge milestone, right? I
indeed,
think everybody
indeed.
can, you finally feel like an adult, right? It doesn't matter how old you are, you always feel like an adult when that happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The threshold from adolescent to you're out in the world now is he's crossing it. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. Um, let's see. Looking at chat here, I saw a couple of things scroll by while we were chit-chatting there. Let's see. Renata following up. I already tried that. So I can UPI those physical nodes I have in my home and practice, not just try it online. Yes, absolutely. So if you use developer subscription, again, it's full OpenShift. There is no restrictions on the things that you can do there other than it is self-supported.
Yeah.
And then just remember to renew those subscriptions every year. So VRDN, I don't know if that pronounces or is it creates a word or not, but
I was
is
trying, yeah.
OpenShift related to Red Hat Linux? So yes, with an asterisk. So OpenShift is Red Hat's enterprise Kubernetes distribution, and it is built on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Core OS, which, as the name implies, is Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Just the Core OS piece means that it's been specifically optimized and tailored for Kubernetes and container-based workloads. So things like it uses RPM OS tree in order to do management of the underlying operating system. So if you've ever used like Fedora Silverblue or something like that. It includes the Red Hat kubelet and all of these other things inside of there in order to optimize it for use with Kubernetes and ultimately OpenShift. But it is literally Red Hat Enterprise Linux. If you look in the release notes for various versions, you'll see where we where we revision the underlying or the base RHEL that CoreOS uses. So I think with 4.19, we're getting ready to move to RHEL 9.6, if I remember correctly, Johnny. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head.
I don't know. No.
I think it's RHEL 9.4. There's a KCS for it somewhere that tells you exactly what RHEL version is used by each CoreOS or each OpenShift version, because CoreOS versions change slightly. Planning for Rosa HCP cluster creation using TF, so Terraform. No such reference available. Any demo link available? Sridhar, I don't know if there is a demo available. I don't know, Johnny. Do you know off the top of your head if anybody has done? I am sure somebody has done Terraform to create Rosa clusters before. We'll just have to dig up where that's happened and see if we can get them to share it.
Yeah, I'll take a look. So, Sardar, if you want to send us an email, just as a reminder, I'll try and find it while we're in the stream. But if you want to send us an email, just to remind us, so that way we can reach out internally. Uh, we'll definitely try and find something for it. But yeah, I don't have any references. I used to do Terraform all the time, so I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I haven't actually gotten here. So,
Let's see, Manoj, good to see you. Christian as well. I didn't say that. Johnny said it earlier, but it's good to see your smiling face on here as well, Christian. Let's see, Johnny, should we jump over to questions?
yeah, we can either start with questions, or if you want to do like a quick recap on some. I don't know if there's. We could probably do both at the same time. It's up to you.
Okay. So yeah, that's a good point. Do you want to open with, or you want to start with any thoughts, summary, like experiences, memorable things that happened while you were at Summit?
Yes. So my favorite thing, I got this nice, awesome Red Hat AI golf ball that you probably can't see clearly because I'm sticking it too close to my camera. But there was a golf simulator at Summit using a Granite model, and it was measuring the your golf swing and stuff like that. And it was awesome. Like I could have probably spent all day there. Like, if they would have let me just kept like going back and going back. I didn't only needed one golf ball, but if I could have just stayed there all day, I would have. And it was funny because I didn't fill out the information. I was in such a rush because I was so excited. I just put my name, and then like just the way that it was snarky, it was it was just so freaking funny, man. And no, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was amazing. If you weren't aware of AI and how big of an impact that AI is making on our industry, uh, it was very clear at Red Hat Summit.
AI, I've never heard of that,
I
Johnny.
mean, my goodness, it was everywhere. So I don't know if I've ever seen something um, splattered so much. It was just everywhere. And there's some cool projects out there. Like I talked to this group from I think Mosul or KitOps. They have a thing
Mhm.
called KitOps, and it's like a Quay registry, if you will, like where you can upload your module or your model artifacts to it, and it'll rate them based
Mm.
off of like the security and stuff like that. So it gives you some good insights into like what you're going to be, what you're distributing or what you're going to be pulling into your environment if you're using like an open library. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, AI is bananas. OpenShift is crazy. Virtualization is everywhere. Like it's a good time to be a nerd. So that's
It
my big
it
takeaway.
is. There's tons of stuff that's happening as well. So my terse summary. So one, I was rarely in the booth. I think they scheduled me for like 2 or 3 hours of booth duty at the Ask an OpenShift Expert desk.
Hmm.
Which when I'm the pretty face of OpenShift, like we all have a lot of problems. So I was there for a few hours. It was good to see a lot of people. Loved interacting with folks. Got a lot of great questions. Alan Cowles was there and kept bringing me in of like the giveaway that they were doing for Alan's thing was if you can stump him, you'll get one of the water bottles that they had to give away.
Nice.
And then he kept pulling me in. It was like, oh well, Sully's my phone a friend in order to get these. So it quickly became Stump the Chump, if you will, which is a lot
Yes,
of fun. That's what we play every day here on the stream, or every
indeed.
Wednesday rather. So that was a lot of fun. But honestly, most of my time was spent in customer briefings. So over at the customer briefing center, where I had 25 or 27, something like that, meetings, or with analysts. I spent a fair amount of time doing various analyst activities and stuff like that. So I have to say, I am excited to see the outcome of a lot of those conversations, right? Analysts go and they do their thing and they write their articles and all of that. So I'm interested to see what they have to say. But the customer briefing center is really interesting. So Red Hat folks know that I spend a lot of time with OpenShift virtualization these days. Probably 90% of what I do is OpenShift virtualization. So in the CBC, most of my meetings were around OpenShift virtualization. And it was just really cool to see the evolution of questions and the type of things that we were getting asked. So one of the things that really, really helped was we published a OpenShift virtualization architecture guide the week before Summit. So I will put the link here in chat. So that link will take you over to that document. It's like 60 pages of bedtime reading if you're struggling to go to sleep, but it goes through a bunch of architectural considerations and stuff like that. And so as we're talking with customers, as they're saying, hey, I'm evaluating, I'm implementing, I want to learn how to scale, I want to learn how to do this with OpenShift virtualization, we point them over that way, and hopefully it helps to answer questions. And then, of course, I think Johnny and I have the most widely known emails in Red Hat at this point, so always
Yes.
encourage folks to reach out. Yeah, other than that, it was just all the normal. I still have not learned my lesson after, I've been at Red Hat since 2018. I've been to most of the summits, since then, COVID notwithstanding. I still have not learned to block off the lunch hour. So it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was in meetings nonstop, and it was one of those like I keep forgetting to actually set aside time for myself to do little things like eat food. So I sustain off of apples, bananas, and granola bars that they have in the little snack bowls.
Yeah. 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 I'm fortunate where I had like an interface where Anthony was there with me, so he was basically like he's essentially my agent while I was there. So I was like, I'm not doing that. Or he's like, no, I
No
need you to have
autographs.
my
No
yeah
autographs.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kissing babies after work, all right? Like not right now.
Okay. So I'm going to do two things here, Johnny. One, I'm going to share my window here. Let's see, share screen, window. That looks like the right one. And two, let's start answering some questions that we have in chat. And Eric Jacobs, for anybody who remembers, Eric came onto the stream, I don't remember how many episodes ago, and talked about OpenShift Lightspeed.
Yep.
So Lightspeed is going through, well, it's maturing, right? It's becoming a really great tool that we have. Uh-oh, I just clicked the wrong thing. Oh, geez. Oh, boy. What do I want? I want this one because I want to unhide the little icon that's right here. So Lightspeed is getting closer and closer to being GA. In fact, I think we announced it as GA at Summit, if I remember correctly. So that means that if it's not already GA, then it will be very, very shortly, because like our window for announcing things is GA, and them actually being GA is like 15 or 30 days or something. So Eric had the suggestion of like, when we get questions here on the stream, like let's run them through Lightspeed and let's see what happens. So I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of start doing that. So let's see. What was the last question that we answered? Renata, will newer OKD or OCP be much easier to upgrade? Older version of OpenShift, OpenStack, and stuff, when I was doing stuff OpenStack and everything there was Ansible. So let's see. So what is the process for upgrading an OpenShift? If I can type correctly.
Yes, please type and talk, Sully. Please type and talk.
My brain and my fingers, like, and my mouth all have to be aligned, otherwise it just goes very poorly. So this is my cluster. You can see that this is an engineering cluster because it's the only one that has Lightspeed turned on for me. But so in my Lightspeed prompt here, I asked what's the process for upgrading an OpenShift cluster. Several key steps: pre-upgrade recommendation, choose the recommended versions, address critical alerts, check for available updates, initiate, monitor, post-upgrade. So it's a very wordy description for something that's actually super easy with OpenShift 4. If you ever did it with OpenShift 3, right, you might remember that it was basically run an Ansible script and pray, and then probably rerun the Ansible script multiple times after various things fail. So I'm actually going to switch over to this cluster. So I said a moment ago that I was going to preview some of 4.19. So this cluster is running 4.19. So you can see this is 4.19 EC5. So EC is an engineering candidate release. This one is actually a little bit out of date. There are multiple RC release candidates that have been made available. So just keep that in mind. So new styling here on the sideboard, right? And you see it's a little less square and all of that other stuff. A lot more rounded corners. What is it, Apple that does that a lot? So yes. I guess we're changing our visual language a little bit. So anyways, administration, cluster settings, and then when I want to update my cluster, I go in here and I have this view here. So you can see that it's giving me some warnings about, like ODF is not supported beyond this version, ODF dependencies is not supported beyond this version, and then it gives me a tree of available versions. So I can go here and I can select the particular version that I want to update to. So I can, from here, choose where I want to go. Strangely, it wants me, these are RCs. So it's saying that I can update to RC4 or RC3. And what will happen here, and it's not in this particular one because there are no, but if there were like caveats or other things to be aware of, it'll tell you exactly what's inside of here. Like, hey, use caution when upgrading to this because of these things. And it'll give you links out to specific KCS and other things in order to get additional information so that you, the administrator, can make the right decision for your cluster, right? Maybe it's only maybe it's related to something that you don't use or something like that. I just noticed this. I think this is new in 4.19. I haven't noticed it before.
Are you talking about the upgrade option right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was there in 4.18. So I noticed it going from 4.17 to 18.
Interesting. So I hadn't noticed that before. Clearly, it's been a minute since I looked at the update screen because I usually just either I rely on one of the folks in my team, which this cluster comes from one of the folks on my team, or I just blow away and recreate the cluster. So anyways, full cluster update means that it exactly what it implies. It updates all of the operators always get updated regardless. So full cluster update refers to updating RCOS and the nodes for both control plane and compute nodes. Whereas control plane only update would be only for the control plane nodes. It'll pause the worker nodes and apply those updates. Why would you want to do that? Because maybe you're going from 4.17 to 4.19. So I do a control plane update to control plane only update to go 4.17 to 4.18 to 4.19, and then I unpause my machine config pools, and they do a jump straight from 4.17 to 4.19. And yes, I am calling out odd numbered versions there because skip updates, or what do we call those? Not accelerated, but I don't remember the term that we use for those. Anyways, it is you can't do that with even updates. It's not, or even and odd updates rather. It used to be only EUS to US, but I believe since 4.15 or so, it's been supported across both. So anyways, all you would do is select the version, hit the update button, and it goes through and it just does everything for you. You'll be able to look over here and it'll tell you as each one of the operators goes through and does it. I'm not going to do it on this cluster because this is not my cluster and I don't want to break things. Yeah, it's much more straightforward than it used to be. Let's see. Where can we check the change log for a specific, hopefully I didn't skip anything here, for specific new versions, for example, 4.17.30 and 4.17.31. So what are the change notes between 4.17.30 and 4.17.31? So currently don't have specific change notes for OpenShift, blah, blah, blah. However, it does, okay, well, what are the release notes between 4.17.30 and 4.17.31? Let's see if that gives me, nope. Anyways, it does have, if you look here, it does provide a link out to the release notes. Strangely, I asked about 4.17, but it gave me the link for 4.18, so keep an eye on that, but inside of here, so if I switch to 4.17 and wait for the docs to...
Yeah, you may actually have to go to the Git repo for the Z stream, where the probably the minor releases, like the Y releases, are probably gonna only have like the fully comprehensive release notes.
They should be in here. So if I come all the way down here to asynchronous errata updates,
yeah, you're right.
I have this 4.17.31 big bug fix.
Yep, you're right.
Right, and then I have 4.17.30 bug fix and security advisory. So they're listed in the release notes page here, as well as you can see it links to like the errata and all that other stuff. So errata is where if you want to get it immediately when it's released, but the release notes do include those as well. How can I learn OpenShift on my own? I'm not going to ask Lightspeed that one. So the easiest way is, well, there's a couple of different ways depending on what you care about. So I can do DO080. If I search for DO080, I land at this Red Hat Learning page. So this is a free course. It's available to anybody and everybody. I really hope it is no longer based on 4.12, but it is. If it is, that's probably fine because this is all kind of basic stuff, if you will, kind of introductory stuff of introducing Kubernetes, right? Kind of just fundamentals to get anybody and everybody started. If you want to do, instructor-led training courses or even self-paced training courses, of course, Red Hat Learning has all kinds of different paths that you can do. Not learning subscription. I think it's the skills path. I'll do it. Anyways, if you go through one of these, it'll tell you like all of the paths that are available and all of the different courses that you can use. I can never find the link anymore. But there's like DO080, DO180, DO280, DO288, DO316, DO380 something, I think.
380.
Just based off of all of the different skills that you would want to learn. But of course, those cost. If you want to do it completely like gratis, right? So no cost, use a developer subscription. So again, developers.redhat.com. So go over here to developers.redhat.com. Right, and if I come up here to, if I log in, which it'll log me in, if I click that button, it's going to log me in with my employee account, which is not useful. But if you log in there, and then there's a whole thing for like getting your developer subscription, and then you can go to, if we go to console.redhat.com, and let's see what happens. Oops.
And just while you're doing this, Sully, for what it's worth, like any demo that I do, any work that I do, I always use my developer account. Like I hardly ever use my Red Hat account because it's like back in the day in consulting, it used to be this, that, you know, like, oh, you're using your Red Hat account, so you've got special access to things and stuff like that. So I've always used my developer account just so I could prove that
Yeah.
as a normie, I can do this. You know?
I'm not going to go through the login process on there, but anyways, if you go to console.redhat.com, so after you create an account, after you apply the developer subscription, you go to console.redhat.com, click the button for OpenShift, and then click the button for create new cluster, and you go from there. We've been saying for like 2 or 3 years now, Jonny, we need to revisit install process. I think we actually really need to revisit the install process at some point.
I agree. A palooza of some sort, yes.
And then, so Mueb, from there, it kind of depends on the type of learner that you are, right? So if you want to just get hands-on and start trying things, like that'll look at how to, deploy cluster, all that other stuff. If you just want to go to learn.openshift.com, which is going to redirect us, well, eventually. So learn.redhat.com will redirect us over to developers.redhat.com/learn. Inside of here, you see we have all of these learning courses. So let's come here and product. I want to search for, there is no search, is there? Red Hat OpenShift. Right? And then from here, it gives me all these different courses. So I can do, well, there is 11 pages of these here. Physical network access with microsegmentation. I'm just going to pick one at random. And from here, it walks you through a bunch of different aspects and a bunch of different stuff. So some of these have live instances associated with them. So when you go into it, it'll say, here is your, it's not instruct anymore. What's the tool that they use, Jonny?
Is it Sandbox?
Sandbox is one of them.
Or Arcade maybe?
Yeah, Arcade is another one. So if we go to try.redhat.com.
I'm just going to name off all kinds of random stuff until...
Try.openshift.com. So developer sandbox is one, get in instant access to your own minimal pre-configured environment. This is just for like development. Like I want to deploy some containers, stuff like that. They get reset on a regular basis. But no, what is the name of that? It used to be instruct. Maybe it's changed. I don't know. Anyways, there's a ton of resources. I'll also point out that my mind just went completely blank on what the you mentioned the interactive demos. So if I go to interact.redhat.com, so we have all of these interactive demos. So let's pick on virtualization for a moment, right? Migrate VMs from VMware to Red Hat OpenShift. If I click in here, it takes me to these demos, right? So you can't do anything except, click the buttons to follow along, but it gives you, depending on the demo, anywhere from, you see this one is going through and setting up value prop and stuff like that. But like it walks you through different things that are available inside of here. And I can click on each one of these and it takes me through and kind of tells me what's going on and why I care about it and all that stuff. So the interactive demos, they're really cool. They do I find them to be valuable for, like when I was in the booth, I was using them in order to show different concepts. I think they're just a neat way to just see something in action with no pressure. Yeah, that was the release notes question. I would have asked about the subscription sizing guide. So the sizing guide is now, so if you're curious, so there's the subscription guide. So the subscription guide way down here at the bottom has multiple examples for sizing subscriptions. So calculate total number of AI accelerator, containers application running on-prem on bare metal. So this is like examples of how to calculate the number of subscriptions you need. We also have, it's not a subscription sizing guide, but we have a virtualization sizing guide. It's red.ht/virt sizing, I think. Yeah. So this sizing guide, we walked through this. Didn't we walk through this on one of the streams, Johnny?
Yep.
Yeah. So that one will walk through, and it we call it the virtualization sizing guide because it uses VMs as the use case, but ultimately the exact same process applies for any workload, regardless of containers or VMs.
And this may be a dumb question. So is there a way to index like all of the short URLs for Vert? Like is there like a /Vert that gives you a dump of all of the, hey, here's the sizing guide, here's the architecture guide, here's the thing. You know what I mean? So that way you can just go to one link and then kind of click from there, almost like in our docs.
Not that I know of. I can ask. I'll ask our the appropriate folks, Simon and Carolyn and Courtney, if something like that exists. Internally, yes. So for any Red Hatters who are watching, if you go to Content Center and you go to the OpenShift Virtualization landing page, there's one of the top few links is like, here is all of the virtualization assets, and it has like 30 slides that link to all of these different things, ranging from the high-level value prop presentations to the technical presentations to like these public-facing sizing guide, architecture guide, implementation guide, right? All that other stuff. So I'll find out about that one, or if you want to ping Caroline or Courtney.
All right, cool. I'll hit them up. Yeah, just I'm sitting there like we're going through all this stuff and I'm typing. I'm like, it'd be kind of cool if we just had a / whatever,
Yeah.
and then you get to see everything.
Let's see what the landing page has to say. Make a plan to migrate. Where does that go? Migration assessment. Okay.
And so Renata also asked a question while we're looking at this about RH442. This is a personal question, right? I mean, this is more like what do you want to learn? If system tuning and stuff like that is still important to you, then then yeah, obviously still do this. But I think that some of those concepts still apply to CoreOS, but the way that they're applied to the systems are just slightly different. So like the information is still valuable, but then like the actual application and an OpenShift environment would change. So I think that's where it gets a little complicated. So it's like if that's something that you love to do and that you still do on a semi-frequent basis, then yeah, I'd say it's still worth it. But I just looked at the course and role, and it looks like it's on rel 8. So I'm sure it's being updated, but it just hasn't been published yet. So
it was
but
RH422.
442, yeah, it's the system tuning and
oh yeah. Yeah. So that one, to your point, Johnny, like if we're talking OpenShift, it probably won't apply significantly to OpenShift because, so spoiler alert, rel compute nodes are no longer going to be compatible with OpenShift in 4.19. I double checked. That's in that was in the roadmap presentation. So that's only a sort of spoiler. So like all of the worker nodes are RCOS. RCOS is rel, but the way that we manage it is very different. So can you go in and adjust those things? Sure. So if I go here to like compute and I look at my machine configs, like I can go in and I can create a machine config that adjusts the configuration of these things. I can also use the performance operator. Operator hub. Right. Is it called the performance operator? What's it called, Johnny?
I start with performance operator.
Nope.
Well then,
tune.
Didn't it used to be the performance operator? We've gone through this twice now. This is the second time. I remember we did this before. I didn't.
It's like the node. All right. Anyway, there is an operator that allows you to go in and make low-level changes. It was when Frank Bodden was on, and we were talking about performance tuning and adjustments.
Node tuning operator.
Node tune. Okay, well, why didn't that?
Every time we go, I remember doing this
Why
because
is
I always
that
thought it
one?
was a performance. I'm pretty sure it was a performance operator before.
I don't know why that one isn't showing up in the list of operators. Oh, you know what it is? It's because this is an EC release, and not
Mm,
all of the operators show up in an EC release. Anyways, yes, it is the node tuning operator. I don't think I can. Yeah, I can't see it in this cluster. I'm not an administrator. So yeah, so you can go in and you can tune and adjust and tweak and all that other stuff. It's just you have to be careful with those things and making broad sweeping. It's not one node that you're tuning and optimizing for an application. It's an entire cluster. And if you're optimizing an entire cluster for one application, but there's 30 different applications on there, you might be doing things that are detrimental to one or more of those other, applications inside of there. And then you start to encounter the scenario of, oh, well, I have 30 applications and I want to fine tune each one of them. Now I need 30 different clusters, and now it gets out of control, right?
yeah.
So I don't want to discourage you, because I think you will still learn a lot of really valuable and really important information about RHEL, which all applies to RCOS, but it's only tangentially applicable to OpenShift.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've got a hybrid environment where you're still managing like systems and stuff like that and actual infrastructure, then outside of OpenShift, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like that, but like if you're actually managing like Linux services on infrastructure as VMs or bare metal and stuff like that, then yeah, it probably makes a lot of sense to do something like that. But OpenShift itself, like it's
Yeah,
it's hard to it's hard to tune it. And
yeah,
our Hope 9 shared the performance and scalability documentation,
oh
so
yeah,
which directs down to the node tuning operator. So thank you for that.
yeah.
And real quick, I did forget early on. I met Dwayne Branch, one of our longtime viewers at Summit. So Dwayne, if you're watching, I wore the T-shirt. It fits amazing. Thank you very much. I will wear it next stream. I wore it too soon though. I forgot. So, uh, but no, it's
Likewise, it was good to meet a bunch of folks actually who are not just Dwayne, but many others who came up to us and said hi and said that they appreciate the efforts that we do here, which is always nice to hear. Thank you.
yeah, I agree.
Let's see, Renata, is Kubert very fun and engaging to play with? I mean, I think so, but I feel like I'm biased because I spend a lot of time on it. So if I look, let's switch over to the virtualization view. So, it's a virtualization solution. So on one hand, it's 2025 and virtualization should not be exciting, right? It's status quo. It's a minimum requirement for just about any organization these days. So I don't want my virtualization solution to be exciting. I don't want to be surprised when it works the way I expect it to. On the other hand, it's really cool to have virtual machines in OpenShift.
Yeah.
And like when you think about it, it kind of makes sense in a lot of different ways. So at the core, OpenShift virtualization is RHEL and KVM, literally the same KVM that was in Rev, that is in OpenStack, right, so on and so forth. So it's the same virtual machines, but now instead of using Horizon and Nova and OpenStack to manage my VMs, or using Rev Manager with Rev or something like that, or if you're a masochist using Cockpit, I'm using OpenShift as my control plane, and OpenShift, the administrator console, as my interface to manage my virtual machines. So like you see it here, this cluster has 8 virtual machines using a bunch of resources. I click in here. Come on, buddy. It'll get there eventually. Maybe, probably. I can switch over here. So if I look in here, like virtualization, virtual machines, I don't know what's happened here. Did my internet go out? Clearly you can still hear me, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, I can hear you.
It just took it a minute. So here's my virtualization dashboard, right? If I come in here and look at my particular namespace, let's hide this so it's a little easier to see. You look at my particular namespace, I see my virtual machines, right? I can come in here and I can do virtual machine things, right? I see the resources that are assigned to it. I can modify the configuration. I can open the console. If I want to create a new virtual machine, it's it's a good thing this is an EC, because that is not what we want.
Good morning.
Yeah. So let's switch over here to this one. So if I go and create a virtual machine, yeah, this is what we get for showing pre-production code, right? This is what it should look like. So I can select like a RHEL 9 boot image. Boot images are just template disks, right? I can choose the amount of resources that I want to assign to it. And then I can adjust various things if I so choose or not. And then I click create. And I have a shiny new tomato tortoise virtual machine, just like that. You see it's going into provisioning. Here in a moment, it'll go into running. It's VMs in Kubernetes. So we get to take advantage of all of the features and functions of the platform. So things like VM disks are stored as PVCs. So when I need to clone my template disk, it uses the CSI provisioner to clone it, which means that it's offloaded to the backing storage. You see it's already up and running. So I don't know. Again, I am biased, but I think that OpenShift virtualization is really cool.
Yeah, I think the big thing is like, before we had these disparate systems, right? We had VM. I'm not gonna call it out, but we had like a VM provider that had its own language and its own like the way that it described like networking resources and storage and stuff like that. And then we had OpenShift, and so sometimes trying to make that that connection between the two, would be passing each other, right? It's ships at night.
Yeah.
And I think now we're speaking the same language for a lot of these pieces. Obviously, there's some very VME specific resources that we can figure like enum state and stuff like that. But like you just said it, the CSI, the CNIs, a lot of that stuff, the back end part of the cluster infrastructure, it's the same. So the
Yeah.
language is the same. So it makes that barrier to entry a little bit easier.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the questions that came up from the set that we asked the Red Hatters, which is like there's a lot of folks who are investigating OpenShift virtualization, even in the process of adopting it. And of course, like how do I learn these skills? How do I gain knowledge of OpenShift virtualization in order to enable my Virt admins to do the things that they need to do? And the short answer is, or maybe the long answer is exactly what we answered before, which is there's a ton of resources out there. DO 316 is the learning course that is specific to virtualization and helping virtualization administrators learn virtualization centric things. But to Johnny's point, it's just OpenShift. So if you do, if you take the DO 180 or DO 280 or any of the other courses, all of those skills apply. Because if I look at this Coral Tiglon virtual machine, right? If I come over here to configuration and go to storage, right? My disk, you see, is a PVC. If I click on this, it takes me over to a persistent volume claim. So if I understand Kubernetes and OpenShift enough to know what a persistent volume claim is, then it's all the same things.
Yeah.
There's a question that I was just
Yeah, we got a couple. So the one, so R9 asked if we mentioned the what's new, and I did say that you did. And then the next question was from Babuni, and it says, from which version onwards is the new virtualization tab available? Is there anything that they need to configure?
Yeah, so this tab shows up starting, I want to say 4.15 or 4.16. And then, so if we come down here to virtual machines, so this tree view doesn't show up until 4.17. I think it's 4.17 is tech preview, 4.18 it was GA. So the way to turn this on is we go here to settings, and then under one of these, here, preview features, enable virtual machines tree view. So if you turn that on, that's what turns on the tree view for the virtual machines over here.
And just to not really extend, so we have the UX team for OpenShift virtualization coming on the stream in a couple weeks. So like if you have some suggestions, if you're using it and you're like, man, I hate this feature or I love this feature, we talked to Peter for a significant amount of time at Summit, and like his team is really looking for feedback, and they're good, bad, and indifferent, right? They really want to know like how people are using it and what they think about it. So please.
Folks laughed at me at Summit because the UX team had a table, like they just commandeered a table in the OpenShift booth and set up camp there. They had like little signs and everything.
Good.
And I would always tell people like nonstop, like go talk to the UX team because they're all masochists. Like they only care about the things that you dislike and want to know the things that are bad.
Yes.
So they're a phenomenal team. They're great to work with, and they genuinely care. I have so many threads and other things open with them where they're just they want all of that feedback. The docs team is the same. You know, sometimes both UX and docs is a bit of a thankless job, right? It feels like
Yeah.
you catch a lot of javelins, but those folks they really genuinely care and they appreciate all of the feedback that we give them. So by all means, you know, if for Red Hatters, you know, ping me, ping Jonny. We're happy to connect you over to them. For anybody, you know, external, send us an email, and we're happy to funnel any and all feedback you have over. So one of the big ones right now is the performance of the new doc site. You know, docs.redhat.com. Sometimes it's just it's a little slow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's known. I'm going to see if I can get it to do it. Yeah, see, this page is just, it takes a few seconds, whereas, you know, the old docs.openshift.com was a lot faster. One of the other ones I've heard recently is sometimes this secondary, I'm going to call it the secondary level of, or table of contents over here, is just not granular enough to be able to find the things that you want, stuff like that. So they take all of that in. They're very happy to hear about those things. So.
Yeah, I got somebody gave me a little, somebody was chewing on my ear a little bit about that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, submit a ticket, submit a bug, they'll fix it.
Yeah, Craig, managing VMs using Cockpit for home lab use is only for the coolest of cool people. I do the same thing. I use it in my home lab. I used it for a long time in my home lab. If you don't know Cockpit, you can have one instance of Cockpit and connect it out to multiple other nodes, which is really cool. Instead of having to, you know, have a bunch of tabs in your browser open, one for each node that you have. Instead, you have one tab with one Cockpit instance, and you just switch between the nodes. So that's really cool, and I do genuinely like Cockpit. I was poking some fun at it, but for things like a cluster of rel nodes, and I want to manage virtual machines across them, like there is no scheduling engine, if you will. So it's, I want to start a virtual machine. I'm going to go to node 7. I'm going to, you know, turn on this virtual machine. I can live migrate it. I think you can live migrate it. I know libvirt will allow you to migrate that. I think Cockpit will, but I don't know. I haven't tried
I don't
that in
know.
a very, very long time. But it's like there's nothing in there that will say, you know, move this VM from node 7 to node 4. There's nothing that says when I turn on this VM, select the node that best meets all of those needs. There is nothing, you know, like with Kubernetes, it makes sure that the network you selected, the storage you selected, right, all of those resources are there and available for it. So it is certainly possible. I know that there's a non-inconsequential number of customers who are doing things like Red Hat Device Edge and Microshift with virtual machines as well, where they're using that mechanism and, along with Ansible automation platform to go out and deploy VMs at remote sites. But
Yeah. And for you
entirely
training
legal.
nerds, if you're doing an RHCSA, I have a friend who said that he did his RHCSA all through Cockpit. Like me, I'm a CLI guy. I can't, you know, I basically don't know my way around anything with a, you know, interface. But like, yeah, he said that he did his RHCSA through Cockpit. So I was like, that's actually kind of impressive. I haven't verified. I'm kind of curious, you know, if you could actually do it. But yeah, it's said he did it. So
Well, yeah, I don't know. I switch back and forth. I've been trying to use more GUI lately.
yeah, like like when you're walking through and you're doing like just being able to use the interface, the UI, like the UI now is so awesome. Like compared to like OpenShift 3, I think maybe that's where maybe a lot of my bias comes from. Is like I'm old, and so I started with OpenShift 3, and OpenShift 3 was good, but it wasn't great. And now it's so much better. But I've gotten so tuned into, you know, working my way around the shell.
Yeah. So closing out, I'm looking at our list of questions here. For the folks who are watching, please continue to ask questions. I think we'll probably go another 20 or maybe 30 minutes. So don't hesitate to ask questions. We're happy to answer those as they come up. So closing out the one about teaching, you know, learning, adding skills for OpenShift virtualization. So questions about, this is consolidated from across the Red Hat folks. So questions about how to go about building OpenShift virtualization skills, how long they should expect it to take, and just what are the resources for teaching. So we touched on the learning services stuff. There's a ton of resources available just in general. Again, if you go to learn.openshift.com and wherever that redirects out, there's stuff there. I know there's multiple training partners as well. that are happy to help. If you look, or if you search for, so there's the OpenShift Virtualization Roadshow. So the Roadshow, if you haven't been to one of these before, they're hosted all over the world. There used to be a link, or there used to be a list of where they're happening at. I don't know why they took that away, but anyways, keep an eye out for like when one of these happens in your area, because you sit down and you have access to a lab, and it walks you through a bunch of tasks inside of there. But really, it's a full-fledged OpenShift environment, so you can do kind of all kinds of things in there. Talk to your account team. So your account team has access to resources in like RHDP, Red Hat Demo Platform, for things like at Summit, we just did a day 2 lab for OpenShift virtualization, where we walked through things like performance troubleshooting and all of that. So they should be able to spin up an instance and hand it over to you. And it has a whole lab guide, just like if you were at Summit, a whole lab guide to go through and look at that and learn some things. As for how long it takes, that's always going to be it depends. My personal approach is like I learn by doing, and particularly for things like virtualization, I learn when I do things wrong, and in particular break things. Jonny, you and I worked together many years ago. I may or may not have accidentally removed data stores a few times, and from underneath a bunch of VMs. And then it's like, oh no, what do I do? And so you learn, how to reattach the data store and how to reconnect all the disks to the VMs and get everything up and running again. And so my opinion is, it always depends. It depends on the individual and how they learn and the type of learning they do. Existing skills, if they already, if you already know Linux and KVM and OpenShift, right? All of those significantly accelerate that path. If you know none of those things, that's okay, right? There's tons of resources. KVM's been around since 2007.
Yeah.
All of the KVM things apply because it's KVM. It's just on top of or in front of or fronted by OpenShift.
Yeah, and I think, like, especially from my perspective, I'm also a doer, right? I learn way better hands-on. Like, I can watch videos and stuff like that, and I can listen to people, and I can learn a lot from that. But like a lot of times, like I'm always asking, like, why? Why do I have to do this? Why? Like, or how? Like, how do I get to this point? How do I have the same, like, if DNS, right? How do I have the Microsoft equivalent DNS service in Linux? How would I set up Bind? How would I set up OpenShift to use that? How do I use external services? Why would I do that? Why did this happen? And so when I can answer those questions, like that's when I feel like I've actually, I don't want to say mastered because I've never mastered anything, but like that's when I've got like a good grasp on the concept. And then that's when I'll start moving on to like more complex things. Like, okay, well, how do I do, this across multiple environments or whatever,
Yeah. I'll also point out, and it just occurred to me, I'm continuing to remind myself to use Lightspeed. Lightspeed helps too. So like, look at this virtual machine, right? It's unschedulable. So I can say, Lightspeed, add the full YAML file and add the logs. Oh, no logs found. Okay. So why is this VM unable to schedule? Unable to schedule due to several reasons related to node selection and taints. There's a node selector mismatch. You can see I may or may not have prepared this one to fail. So there's a node selector that's called this will fail, right? And so it goes through and it tells me exactly what's wrong and gives me suggestions on how to fix it as well. I made the mistake of deleting the virtual machine after I did it. I had one where the PVC refused to provision. And so we were able to go through and using Lightspeed, select we go here to the storage and it would say, oh, PVC is unavailable. So we click on this and then we do the same thing of, okay, attach the YAML file and, why is this PVC not provisioning? Now I'm curious to see what's going to say since it does exist. Yeah, it's already in the bound phase, which indicates it's been successfully provisioned. But anyways, it went through and said, oh, well, the PVC isn't provisioned because the CSI provider is having an error. And okay, so we go over to the CSI provider and feed it its logs and say, well, what's happening here? And it basically said, the CSI provisioner is throwing this error because the storage system is reporting an out of capacity error. And so it was this like really neat series of things where I didn't have to dig through logs. I didn't have to look at anything. I just said, Lightspeed, help me, and followed its trail of breadcrumbs.
Dobby!
Yeah, RHOPE 9, right? Learn from making mistakes. That's why you need to attempt it yourself. 100% agreed. What that threshold is for you, or the risk threshold is different for every person in every organization. So what do I mean by that? Like, when do I feel comfortable as an administrator, as somebody who's responsible for a platform or a system to host my applications, virtual or containerized, doesn't matter, right? When do I feel comfortable enough to put that into production? And some organizations, it's a low threshold, right? Hey, we've spent the last, couple of months, I've been hands-on, I've deployed things, I feel confident in my skills and Red Hat support that we can get things resolved appropriately. And some organizations, it's, no, we want to have, test all of these scenarios. We want to make sure our administrators are, all competent and capable of handling these actions and stuff like that. But that's ultimately up to each organization. Hasne, I want to build 2 OpenShift clusters and set up replication between them. Is that possible? Yes. So I said that strangely for a couple of reasons. So one, it's not a intrinsic OpenShift feature to do replication. So instead, you would use something like GitOps / Argo CD or ACM or something like that sits outside of the cluster and is able to configure all of those things to happen. So there's 2 things that you need to be aware of. One is the metadata associated with that application. So the deployment definition, secrets, config maps, all of those types of things. And then 2 is any persistent data, so any PVCs that are being used by it. So how those PVCs get replicated from one to the other is, generally speaking, the responsibility of the CSI provisioner. So whatever your storage provider is, you would just work with them to figure that out. But yeah, John, anything to add there? You're a GitOps wizard.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, and just kind of like do a soft plug for an upcoming episode that we're gonna have where we're gonna try and get Christian back on, Christian Stark and Harriet, where we're talking about the GitOps agent, and so it's gonna make that replication between the clusters a lot easier without having to have like the OpenShift GitOps operator installed. So it's that multi-cluster deployment is gonna be quite nice.
Let's see what Lightspeed has to say. How do I configure an application to replicate to a different cluster for disaster recovery purposes? It recommends ACM.
Yeah.
And OpenShift virtualization for some reason? I mean, okay.
And the way that this happened, we touched on this a couple weeks ago, Sully, where you can use policies to deploy operators and applications to your spoke cluster. So if you have multiple clusters, you can use a policy to distribute applications and secrets and config maps and stuff like that across.
Yeah. I see here. So it's choose a disaster recovery method, and it's talking about metro or regional. So really, these are relating to ODF.
Mm-hmm.
So as an aside, where it probably got that information is a disaster review. Who I want? Yeah. So this OpenShift virtualization disaster recovery guide. Let me stop sharing briefly so I can log in. We'll show that. Tangentially related, we did just update the high availability guide for OpenShift. So it's focused on virtual machines, but really the principles apply to any workload inside of OpenShift.
And we just got a question from Craig too, not to divert you from what you're doing, but if you have an OVE worker node with local storage on the nodes, no shared storage, can you migrate VMs between the nodes?
No, not today. Sorry, I had to reread the question. Not today. So I think it was in the roadmap presentation. I know it was at Summit. So we are working on a thing called cross-cluster live migration for virtual machines, which also works across namespace. So essentially, if you had a VM that is, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if that would work or not. So if I had a VM that is on, it's one cluster, and node 1 is namespace A and node 2 is namespace B, I think it would work that way, where I could do a cross-cluster live migration, and it copies the data from what is effectively one storage class to another in the process. But if they're in the same namespace, I don't know if that would work or not.
Yeah, because you'd have to really like quiesce it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a storage live migration does result in a compute live migration at the end. So maybe that would work, because effectively when it live migrates from node 1 to node 2, or when it completes the storage live migration, it would then trigger a live migration, and the only place that it could land is then node 2, because that's where its storage is tied to. So
Right.
maybe, but I don't think that that's, I would be very surprised if that's a tested scenario by engineering. So the answer is probably we don't know.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my thought. Oh, the disaster recovery. So I put the link to this KCS in the chat here. So this walks through generically all of the different scenarios. So this is where it talks about like metro and regional. So even though these are terms that the ODF folks use pretty heavily, really they're generic industry terms. And this KCS just walks through a bunch of things inside of here. It talks about different ways that you can do replication. I don't remember if this is focused on virtual machines or not, but again, virtual machines are just like any other workload in the cluster. So all of these principles should apply regardless. And then the high availability KCS is this one. So again, we focused it on virtual machines, but virtual machines are just like any other workload, which means that all of these concepts and principles are going to apply across all of them. I'll include, here, I'll send a link to this as well. Can you do the migration over UDNs? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know enough about UDN and how it's using that. So live migration traffic will traverse any network that we can associate a network attachment definition for. So in theory, yes. So UDN, if you're not familiar, UDN stands for user defined network. It's a new concept in 4.17, I think. 4.17, it was added into OpenShift for container-based workloads. And just as the name implies, it allows users and administrators to define additional logical networks for workload to connect to. So I can create what is effectively an entirely separate, isolated SDN for my particular application to work with. So maybe I have, one or, all the pods sit on the SDN, and that's how they do outbound communication. But inside of the application, they use a different UDN to communicate amongst each other in order to do something. 4.18 added support for virtual machines with user-defined networks. User-defined networks are interesting for a number of ways. So one, if you're familiar with OVN Kubernetes has had for a long time the L2 topology secondary network. So where are you? So clear chat. Yep. So tell me about OVN Kubernetes secondary networks with L2 topology. Right. So the L2 topology effectively creates, just like I said, a separate SDN that spreads across the nodes. The big difference is there is no egress from that. So anything that's connected to that, they can talk to each other, L2 adjacency, but they can't talk to the outside world on that network. UDN fixes that. Basically, it allows egress and stuff like that. You see here, L2 topology supports east-west traffic, enabling communication. However, it does not provide access to the underlying physical network, nor can you egress out of it. So on the roadmap for UDN in 4.19, I don't know if it's 4.19.0 or if it'll be one of the other Z streams, they're going to add BGP support as well. So effectively what that means is you configure UDN, you give it a BGP AS number, you give it a / something, and it works with the upstream routers and will dynamically create networks to attach workload to. So, you know, I'm tired of dealing with Jonny and asking him for, you know, networks for my virtual machines or my containers. So Jonny says, here's your AS, here's a /20 or a /16 or whatever. And then when I create a new user-defined network, it carves off, say, a /26 or something inside of there. It advertises that route out using BGP. And then when I connect my workload onto that, it has a direct access from the rest of the world or the rest of my network anyways.
Nice.
So yeah, we separately, we've been talking about bringing the UDN team on to deep dive on all that stuff. So we should definitely get on that. Was there? I thought there was another question.
No, I think we're all caught up.
Okay. Let's see. You want to pick a question from our list here, Jonny?
Yeah, the one that I had, and so I reached out to our internal, Sean Rickard about some of the ACS stuff, and one of the questions, let me find it really quick, was let's see, are there any plans, or I'm sorry, that's not the one. If both RHACS, so ACS and Gatekeeper, they both deliver an admission controller, what is the vision when which admission controllers to be used? So basically, if you they both do a very similar thing. Which one should you use? And from Sean said if you have like one or the other, basically if you have plans to ever implement ACS, then use ACS. If you don't, then use Gatekeeper. But really, at the end of the day, when it comes to the admission controllers, use what comes with the cluster for that, and then kind of go around. So instead of having like ACS and Gatekeeper trying to, you know, Rochambeau for resources, or trying to figure out who's the boss on making the decision and stuff like that, or policy enforcement, like really kind of pick one. And if you have any future plans to use like ACS over Gatekeeper, just stick with ACS and go with that out of the box. And then another question that I found was for classic managed OpenShift, I need to select the size of the control planes. How does this work with HCP? Do you scale for the customers based on the need of the cluster? What about downtime, cost, etc.? So when you're building out your managed cluster, you need to keep in mind a bunch of things, right? Like one, every time you spin up a hosted cluster, it's going to create a namespace, and then those pods are going to run within that namespace on your managed cluster. So you need to account for that. And this is personal experience, by the way. Like I spun up a workshop and I was like, oh man, I'm actually not out of compute or memory, but I've hit a pod limit. And so yeah, maybe that's a good question. Like, what's the pod limit for an OpenShift cluster? Or yes. Yeah. So you can actually change this, but
Yep. Yeah. So
um
what is the maximum value for max pods? Default is 250, can be adjusted based on requirements and node capabilities. So the real answer there is 2,500, by the way. Do I have the docs up? No. Let's see, docs. So if I come down here to, oh gosh.
gonna be nodes, right? Under nodes.
Let's see what happens when I search. Here we go, recommended performance and scalability. I say that because what I want is somewhere in this section is the planning your environment according to object maximums. So if we come down here, right, maximum number of pods per node is 2,500.
Yeah.
So I want to call that out. So the default is 250, right? But the maximum is 2,500. So why is there such a discrepancy there? So one, and really the maximum is based off of kubelet stability. So what is kubelet stability determined by? So it's two things. One, the resources that it has available to it. So CPU, memory, storage, network, etc. And two, and really, pod churn. So if I have 100 pods that are constantly churning, starting, stopping, changing configuration, right, doing all kinds of things inside of there, that puts a lot of strain on kubelet as opposed to 2,500 pods that get created once and don't change for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, technically the number of pods per node is 25, or the max number is 2,500. But reality is that number is going to be based off of like when you experience kubelet stability. So the default is 250 for a reason, because we expect that most deployments, right, minimum node deployment or node requirements of, I don't even know what it is anymore, 2 CPUs and 8 gigabytes of memory or something. Like, we would expect reasonably expect you're going to be able to host 250 pods on there. But going above that is where we need to take into account, like, how much resources do I reserve for kubelet to do its thing? How much, is my CPU, literally clock cycles can affect it. Like, is it fast enough to be able to do the things that I need it to do when it's churning through 2,000 plus pods? So sometimes you'll talk with folks inside of Red Hat. We have various presentations for like OpenShift virtualization where we recommend no more than like 400 VMs per node for the same reason. Like, sure, I might have a node that has 4 terabytes of memory and 192 cores, but from a pod count perspective, we still have to be aware of kubelet stability, and that's ultimately determined by pod churn. So that's why there's sometimes discrepancies there, why it doesn't always make sense.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like if you try to like shrink your cluster sliders or your machine networks and stuff like that, right? Like okay, not machine networks, but your cluster network and stuff like that, then that's also going to be a limitation, right? Because that's going to be how far out you can scale up with your pods. But yeah, so it's when you're thinking about cost and like sizing and stuff like that, you need to make those considerations. I was not going to figure that out on a Friday night, right before a thing, and so I was like, all right, I'm just going to scale out my host control plane cluster. Now, when it comes to cost, general costs are going to apply if you're scaling out, right? So for whatever worker node costs, that's what you're going to end up paying for, and then like whatever network bandwidth and stuff like that you're using. But generally, like being able to scale out your management cluster or your hosting cluster it's as simple as OC scale your machine sets, and then when you want to scale out your node pools, you just scale out your node pools or create new node pools with different features and stuff like that. But the cost is all very typical, and I think at this point, like if you run nothing but M5 4XLs, it's going to be a lot. It's not going to be super cheap. So.
I see Khalil posted a question here. For those building out CI/CD pipelines, how to include automated testing for VM images, and how to ensure those images are secure and compliant before going live. Let me think of how I want to answer this. The way to do that is using the traditional virtual machine tools. So for example, let's say that I am using a pipeline to build a customized RHEL image. So I use things like, oh gosh, what's the CLI tool for cracking open a QCOW and like a RHEL VM image? And
something fish.
Guestfish? No.
Guestfish. Yes. Yeah. libguestfs and Guestfish. Yeah.
Yeah. So like there's CLI tools that I can use of like, hey, I have this, I want to create a new RHEL VM based off with this QCOW as the template. And then I want to basically do a DNF install against that file system, right? So basically in your pipeline, you're instantiating a container image that has all of those tools. You build that VM image inside of it, you shove it into a PVC, and then maybe the next step is you mount that PVC that has that VM disk in it to a container that has your security tools. So your antivirus or package scanner or whatever happens to be inside of there, and it scans that disk image. And the output of that is what's fed into the pipeline in order to make those decisions as it goes through. So all of those tools apply. They're just running from inside of containers. That's happening inside of there. So Quay nor ACS will do, I'm going to say, guest OS image scanning. So if I create a template disk, so a boot image over here, so wherever I had those at, so if I like these bootable volumes, like neither Quay nor Advanced Cluster Security can crack open a Fedora disk image and inspect the packages inside of there and give you a readout of the security inside of there. Those tools are intended for container images. You could squint and say, well, but aren't they kind of the same? And yes, they kind of are the same, right? They're all Linux packages at the end of the day, but just different packaging formats. We should probably, there is, Johnny, tap dance for a minute while I see if I can find a blog post. There was a blog post like 2 years ago that showed how to do some of this.
Cool. Yeah. R Hope 9 was saying that another thing with the pod count would be, well, he made the statement about 2,500 pods would make your etcd HG. I thought that was funny. But there is a big leap coming in 1.33 with etcd. And then he shared the link, and I'm just going to post it up here. So yeah, if you're interested in checking it out and kind of like tracking what's going on with that, that's upgrades and etcd. It'd be kind of cool to have the etcd team. I know he moved on within Red Hat. I can't remember. Now I can't remember his name because I'm trying to. Where they came on and they were doing like the etcd performance stuff. Do you remember? Anyways, it'd be cool to have those guys come back on and kind of talk about like the things that are going on with the latest and greatest.
Tangentially related, did you see that there's a new version of etcd?
I did not.
Yeah, it's the first one in like 3 years or something.
What?
Oh, there's a new blog post on doing golden image management with pipelines. Here, let me send this out. Push that blog post out through chat there. Yeah, new etcd release 2025. We'll see if this, etcd 3.6.
Nice.
So I don't know when it'll make it into OpenShift, but I thought that was really interesting that, first new release in 4 years.
Was this? I mean, honestly, right? That's street cred right there. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we made it 4 years without having to do like a major. It just works.
Yeah. So yeah, congrats to the etcd team. And like you said, I think a good chunk of the etcd team is here at Red Hat. But if you saw, I scrolled kind of quickly, but if you saw, not everybody on the etcd team is at Red Hat. So it's a really cool, open source and community. It's a beautiful thing. So I thought this was really cool, and I think there's some interesting things here. In particular, one of these is performance, and it's funny because it's like we reduced average memory consumption by at least 50%, and like I love that the two changes that they did here are like relatively minor. Like down below here in throughput, it's like the improvement is not attributed to any single major change, but rather just the cumulative effect of multiple minor enhancements. So like just a lot of little things that they're fixing, because it's a mature and stable project, but still making improvements in meaningful ways. So anyways, I'm excited to see. I can only assume that this will make its way into OpenShift at some point.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I said we go for another, 20, 30 minutes. It's been 30 minutes now. So any last questions so let me reset there. For our audience, please, any questions that you have, send those over. We'll definitely, prioritize those and getting those answered while we're here live on the stream. While people are contemplating those, any last question that you want to address from our big list of things from Summit, Johnny?
Yeah, the one is how do you manage many small clusters and it was like the next question was like, is it via hosted control planes? And yeah, I think it's ACM, right? And then hosted control plane with the multi-cluster engine. Because like if you're and I like the word that you used earlier, right? If you have a bunch of churn and you're spinning clusters up and tearing them down, like maybe if you got pipelines that are dependent on this. My team does a lot of like we'll spin some stuff up, test the thing, burn it, spin another one up, test another feature, that kind of thing. So if you've got a bunch of churn, you cannot go wrong with hosted control planes. I mean, at all. And I think even if you have some stability, uh, it's perfect for that. And the overall management of these clusters is super easy, especially like once you get acclimated to the workflow. But if you're doing like a bunch of single node clusters or maybe a bunch of 3 nodes or just different configurations, ACM is that you're not going to go wrong with ACM either.
So Jonny, let me ask you, like, I think there's four tools, right? So there's hosted control planes,
Mhm.
there's ACM, there's GitOps, and there's Ansible automation platform.
Yeah.
Like, what's your breakdown on like when and why to use each one of those?
Yeah, so ACM is when you're doing multi-cluster management, right? You're trying to do policy enforcement. And by multi-cluster management, I really mean provisioning, application delivery, operator deployment. Like I'm trying to do consistency, right? GitOps is when I'm trying to deploy applications, but maybe I've got multiple clusters, but maybe I've got like a single entry point and I want to control everything through Git. Ansible automation is when you have a lot of like there's a lot of like I need to go out and do a thing, right? Maybe I need to go out and hit an API and take something, maybe get a key back and then go and do another thing with it. But I feel like that's probably like very AAP. If you have like specific workflows, like hey, I want to, we took a lot of our automation, like business automation things out, but like
Yeah.
maybe I want to like I have a snow request, right, that comes in and I want it to go take some actions based off of like some event that happens. I think AAP is really good at that. But ACM for me is where it's like, hey, I've got N or more cluster or one or more clusters, and I want to deploy them and I want to manage them. I want to push secrets. I want to like deploy applications. I need them to all look the same, right? I need minions, and that's what I'm gonna get. And I think hosted control planes is if you, just the quick and dirty is if you're trying to churn and you're trying to like spin and burn really quickly, that is the way to go.
Yeah, I'll say hosted control planes it's not really a management thing. It's an implementation detail.
Hmm.
It's like, do I use IPI or agent-based installer or assisted installer or hosted control planes, right? It affects how the cluster is managed, but it's not really a management paradigm in and of itself.
Right.
So in my mind, the two main answers are ACM, which I agree with what you said, right? ACM is great for cluster lifecycle management. So create, configure, do all of the things associated with it. But I think even ACM is rotating towards using GitOps and Argo for doing application management.
Yep.
So I use ACM to go out and deploy my clusters, which can be HCP clusters, which can be hyperscaler hosted managed service clusters, can be hyperscale hosted self-managed clusters with IPI, on-prem, blah, 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 right? And then now that my cluster is created, I use ACM policies and governance in order to push configuration down to that cluster. What's my authentication authorization? What's my
Mhm.
compliance profile? So on and so forth. But then I use Argo to go out and push applications into those clusters if I need to do multi-cluster configuration for
Yeah.
applications. Ansible, I think, fits in as a complement to both of those. To your point, ACM, I want to use ACM to provision a new cluster, but I need to create a new storage volume, or I need to add a new VLAN into my network switch, or something like that. I think Ansible automation platform is also really, really important if you're doing OpenShift virtualization, because that's how we manage the guest OS.
Yeah.
So now I can create this end-to-end thing of, I'm going to use OpenShift and Ansible to not just provision a VM or not just do something in my guest OS, but I can glue everything together using, say, DevHub, where now I have an application catalog and I click the tile and I say, provision me a new Sully application. And it has, 6 VMs and 32 containers, and I use Argo to create those objects, but I'm using Ansible to go out, and those 6 VMs are database VMs, and they need iSCSI LUNs coming off the storage, and I need to create a new configuration on my load balancer. I want to use an external load balancer to direct traffic into the cluster for those 32 container instances, or whatever that means, right? They
Mhm.
all work in conjunction with each other to create that holistic approach for application provisioning and management.
Yeah, and like with AEP, and it's not just AEP, but like if you've tried to do anything within Kubernetes where you actually have to go out and maybe you're trying to, scrape the AWS API for something, right? Or maybe you're trying to get, some information back from some external service. I mean, you can do it in Kubernetes. You can set a job up and it can, as long as it can get out, it can go and get
Yeah.
that information. But now you're creating another pod, another job to do this thing. And then if you're using GitOps, then it's like, is it a one shot? Is it something that runs continuously every time you sync? You know what I mean? Whereas like Ansible's built for that, right? It goes out, you can go out and scrape this information, store the value, and then now you're not having to worry about creating secrets or config maps, and you're not really worrying about how you're moving stuff around. You can just go out and get the information and then parse it from your cluster, which I think is, complementing each other is like the best way of putting it, because that's really what it's for.
Yep, agreed. I'm out of steam. I think I told you, Johnny. I haven't said it out loud. Of the air conditioning is broken right now, so it is getting steamy hot here in the office. It's like the thermostat is on the other side of the closed door here, but it's got to be like 80 degrees in here. They're coming in a couple hours to look at it. So
Good luck, man. That's miserable.
I got to go find a fan.
Yeah, good. Go do it.
Johnny, I appreciate you. Thanks for all your help today. To our audience, really, really appreciate all the chat, all the questions that have come in. I love that of the 90 minutes that we've been here, we spent probably 75 of those asking your questions, the things that brought up, and we kind of only rambled through the list that we had briefly. So thank you so much. If you're still with us, if you're still watching us, or if you're listening to us and you want to ask us a question, please feel free to reach out at any time. You can reach us via email. That's the easiest way. Jonny, Jonny at redhat.com, or Sully, Sully at redhat.com. We'd love to hear from you all. Our Hope 9, please don't apologize for asking questions. We love it when you all ask questions, and thank you for your help as well in providing links and helping to answer questions. With that, Johnny, any last thoughts before I click our closing?
No, it's summer season. We're trying to get more guests. So if there are topics that you want or that you're interested in, please hit us up and we'll do our best to reach out. I went to a talk at Summit on Coco, confidential containers, and definitely want to get that team on, because I think that there was a lot of people in that session, and there's soon to be a lot of interest around it. And I know that we've had some questions about it on the stream, and then obviously and also on the Get Up Sky to the Galaxy live stream. So definitely want to get that team on so we can talk to them about it, because it's probably gonna be the next big thing.
Yeah, and Karthik here says that he's typing up some questions, so we'll wait a little bit longer for those. If not, Karthik, please don't hesitate to send us an email.
Yeah.
Johnny, I don't think we talked about it. Do we have any scheduled streams coming up? I don't know what's next week. 2 weeks is the UX team.
Yep. June 18th is the UX team. I'm working with a partner right now, trying to lock them in, but it's been very, async on communication. So trying to figure that out. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of things boiling up, but nothing concrete yet. So yeah, we're still working on it.
Yeah, and I know. So in 2 weeks, when the UX team is on, I won't be here. I have analyst things that overlap our entire stream time. And then I think the week after that, the last week of June, I'm on PTO. And then I think, are we going to stream the week of July 4th, Johnny?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So it'll be. So we have next week, the week after. So basically three streams, of which I will only be at one of those, and then we'll take the week of June 30th off. So that'll be Wednesday, July 2nd. We won't be streaming, so we'll be back Wednesday, July 9th.
Yep. And our Hope 9, the next Galaxy stream, I'm working on that right now. So with I don't know if you know, like, she put it out there, so it's not like I'm putting out her personal business. But Hillary had surgery on her shoulder, and so she's out on medical leave. So when I think we're gonna try and do a couple before she comes back, but right now I'm trying to lock in a guest. There's a couple nets that I have out right now with a couple of the people that I met at Summit, and so yeah, as soon as I have something concrete, then I'll schedule it, and then I'll put it out on. I say all the socials. Really, I'll put it out on LinkedIn because I'm trying to. I hate social media.
I'm going to ignore that you use nets there. Like you got to trap people to come on.
You know, like I was just down at the beach, so it's like it's the whole fishing thing. Yeah. So. And yes, sword accident. That's basically what happened. She'll never admit that, but yeah.
Sword. Karthik, in our cluster, we have a lot of alerts configured as critical, but actual important alerts are in warning states. For example, node file system almost out of space, node not ready. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll wait for you to finish typing there, Karthik. Taking a peek at Slack for a moment because I saw my Slack count going up significantly. So sometimes that means that I need to eat crow, or I otherwise have need to insert my foot in my mouth.
Yeah, I
It looks
always flip back and
non-critical.
forth.
And our alert manager is configured only for critical alerts. Due to this, we aren't aware of cluster state and lost logs due to file store. So one, if you haven't configured cluster logging, I would suggest that. So cluster logging will forward all of those into a central repository, so that way they don't get lost if something happens to the node. But ultimately, I've seen a number of requests lately. Actually, that was one of the questions that was in our list of things here of like, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, why isn't there out-of-the-box golden paths available for observability? Is the one that comes to mind of like describing exactly that of here are the things that we think you should configure and some suggested ways of doing it and pros cons associated with that. So I don't know if the observability team is working on those types of things, but in the case of specifically logs, definitely configure cluster logging and store those somewhere. Cluster logging would be, if you use OpenShift cluster logging to store those, it would be Loki, which is an object store, but you can also forward them off to somewhere else. So if you use Splunk or whatever for your log management. How do we include certain warning alerts in our critical alert manager, and we don't want to configure alerts for warnings? I think, let's see what good old Lightspeed has to say here. So clear chat. How do I configure alerts for critical? Let's see, critical issues, but not warnings. I don't think I have alerting installed on any of my clusters. Well, I guess I do. Let's see. Switch over to the administrator view, observe, alerting, navigate to observe, and then to the alerts tab. Select the project you want to list, and then use the severity filter to display only critical. And then here's an example alerting rule. For critical, labels severity as critical. So let's see. It's one thing for me to sit here and scroll through it and say, oh, look, there's the answer. But really, that's not something I can share with you, Karthik. So let's see if we can find it here in the documentation that was so helpfully linked. Yeah, so it seems to be quoting from here. So if you haven't seen the documentation, I would suggest starting here. I'll post that link in there. But so in the interest of time, Karthik, if you would please send Jonny and I an email, and we can make a connection with you over to the observability team and see if we can get like specific actions for you to take there. And then we can follow up in a future episode once we have the answer as well.
And just so everybody has a context of what our Hope 9 and I are talking about in chat, there was a request that he put in about finding like a public library of Prometheus alerts that we could configure for certain things. Like, think of it as like a cookbook of Prometheus things. I started this thread 100 years ago and I never followed up on it. And so now that's where I'm like, I am like the most easily distracted person of all time. Like I get started and then so I will find out and then and spread the love if I find out if there is anything.
All right. I think, are we good, Jonny?
Yep. Good to go.
Okay. All right. So thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate all of your time, all of your attention, all of the questions, all of the chat. We love all the interactivity. So we will be back next week. I don't know what the topic will be yet, but I think we've got a few on our backlog that we can tackle between now and then. And with that, Jonny, I will see you in no more than 7 days, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Have a good week, everybody.